We're going to talk about the land girls. I'm sure you know what they are, what they were during both World Wars. Hundreds of thousands of women recruited into the land army to replace farm workers who'd gone away to fight, but no official records were ever kept.
Well, now one former Royal Navy officer is trying to trace some of the former land girls who farmed in Devon during and after World War II. Emma Raminsky has been to meet them.
From the ploughing to the harvest, the girls of the Land Army work with all the skill and confidence of a regular farmer's boys. Making a good rick usually calls for a lot of experience, though the girls are a little more used to the comb.
Working the land during and after the Second World War involved hard work and long hours for the women that volunteered. Grace Dray is pictured here with her potato harvest. She lied about her age to sign up for the Women's Land Army and leave London for Dartmoor. She'd never worked on a farm before, but looking back now at 94, believes it was the making of her.
It was hard work. I know that we felt every muscle was strained, you know, we're doing really heavy work. And when you're only working in an office, that is very sedate. But I loved every minute of it.
So you had a pair of these, I assume?
Yeah.
Pair of them?
Yeah.
Did you like those?
No, I didn't.
Grace is just one of the 1,700 former land girls that farmed in Devon. Bex Pearson started her quest to record their stories when she bought some old uniform at an auction, but couldn't find out about the Women's Land Army locally.
They did so much to feed the country. Dame Trudy Denman, who was the director of the Women's Land Army during Second World War, said the Land Army fight in the fields, and it's in the fields that we may well win this battle, because without the nation being fed, we couldn't fight the war. So they were an amazing group of women. Did you ever drive a tractor?
I did drive a little Ferguson.
Oh, did you? Oh, OK.
But I wasn't supposed to because I hadn't passed my test.
OK.
Not all land girls lived and worked together as part of a gang. Ruby Terry worked on a neighbour's farm in Kingston. She never got a uniform or a badge. 85 years later, Bex has brought one along for her.
You were definitely one of the girls that got forgotten. Yeah. So I think that you should have a badge.
Ruby milked the cows twice a day and worked in the fields in the afternoons.
That's your Land Army badge. And thank you very much for all that you did during the war to make sure that the country got fed.
Thank you.
How long did it take you to milk 50 cows every morning and night?
Well, not very long. Once you got used to it, you had to be quick, you know, before they come up to collect it.
It's absolutely unbelievable, and to get some sort of recognition after such a long time.
Bex is ex-forces herself and hopes more land girls from Devon come forward so she can record their stories.
And that was Emma Raminsky with that report. Joining us now is Women's Land Army historian Nicky Reynolds. Good morning to you. I love your hair. Very of the era. What's really striking watching that report and hearing from Ruby and the other women is that thing of that generation, the modesty. It was just part of life.
Absolutely. And I think they did things with a very quiet grace.
And as you've looked into the land girls more and more, is it interesting to note the absence in documentary evidence of what they did?
Well, it is. I mean, it's very frustrating that because they weren't a military force, there was no requirement to hold those records. And of course, the Land Army itself, when as an organisation, as it was functioning during the war, kept things at a very basic functional level. They kept very scant records because they acted almost like an employment bureau. So their main function was to match women up who had enrolled with contracts of work in their farming communities. So the records themselves, when you do find them, don't give you an awful lot of detail. And that's sadly what families mostly want when they inquire. They want to know more about where their relatives served, and they want some of that delicious detail that unfortunately the remaining service records just don't tell you. But there are ways to find out, and we try searching through all of our different records and avenues to try and get those lovely service stories.
And just give us an insight, if you would, into the kind of... You mentioned the things that people did. We're seeing some of the pictures on the screen while you're talking, Nicky, but just give us an idea. It wasn't just working in the fields, was it?
No, I mean, the girls basically did any agricultural work that was kind of put their way. The Land Army were very keen to be seen to be taking up the challenge of filling that gap in the agricultural workforce. So girls would be expected to do a wide range of things, and it's probably easier to list the things that they didn't actually have a go at than to come up with a huge long list of all of the things that they did. But they would do very mundane things, and then they would have some really quite unusual jobs as well. The ones that stand out for me are particularly around pest control, and they had girls that were trained specifically to be rat catchers, because obviously rats in agriculture and, eating up the crops was a huge problem. So lots of girls went off to train specifically to be rat catchers. And of course, working in land reclamation as well, because the Land Army was responsible and had the challenge of, increasing the arable and pastoral acreage during the war. So, yeah, I mean, these girls were working with heavy machinery, big cranes, big diggers and stuff in land reclamation that was really quite sort of cutting edge and dangerous at the time. So that, there was lots of girls really out there.
I always think, Nicky, about these women who went from an expected role in society to very much entering a man's world and being crucial to the war effort, and then post-war were kind of pushed back to domesticity.
I know, and it is frustrating from a historian point of view. It's frustrating when you see women who went through the Great War. Because obviously the Land Army was created in the Great War. They laid the foundations, if you like, and that was why it was very easy to put the Land Army back into force in the Second World War, because basically the Great War Land Army created the blueprint for operations. So and then you saw after the Great War, you saw the women kind of, sort of going back into domesticity and, being told to get sort of back home and start having families and, get married and support your husband. And then again, it happened in 1950, and these incredible women who had sometimes worked for over a decade and had careers and, were managing large plots and large farms and doing incredible things. Again, it was like, well, okay, so we've finished with it now. You can go back home and get married and settle down and have a nice, bring up a family. So and actually, it's a sad fact, but that's what happened.
Nicky, thank you so much for talking to us. So important these stories are told, aren't they? Before, sadly, the Land Army, the Land Girls are no longer with us. Nicky Reynolds, Army historian, Land Army historian, thank you.
Yeah, I'm grateful for those historians filling those important gaps.